Welcome to today's episode of Surviving and Thriving in Residency. I'm your host, Charley Lowry, and today I'm very happy to have with us Mariela Alvarez-Sosa, MBA. Mariela has been a leader in provider recruitment and physician alignment strategies for more than 25 years. She has built in-house recruitment teams for public and for-profit healthcare organizations. She has lectured across the nation on physician and APP hiring trends and has helped thousands of physicians and advanced practice providers choose the right career paths that's right for them. Now, as the founder of Lucid, Mariela brings her extensive knowledge of provider recruitment, contract negotiation, compensation reviews, and workforce communication and engagement strategies to coach both physicians and employers as they navigate the employment process. Mariela, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on Surviving and Thriving in Residency.
Thank you. Thank you, Charley. I am so happy to be here.
So what we always start with is just going to let you talk about you a little bit. Tell us about your background and leading up to Lucid.
That's a very long-winded story, so I'll make it really, really short. So for 25 years or so, I've had the honor, because I really think it's an honor to be able to help physicians and providers. Actually, very recently, I was working with APP as well and psychologists. And I have to tell you, it's just as lovely to do that and to be able to help them find their career next step. I've been on the employer side, bringing them in, building practices, building programs, and being able to hire them. And I have always been very, very fortunate to have amazing individuals help me in my career. And I've always wanted to pay it forward. And one of the things that I really wanted to do, one of my bucket lists, was to be able to provide the physicians the opportunity to be able to have someone that would be on their side. The same way that I was on the other side, I wanted to be on their side to help them understand what they were getting into, to help them understand how do you transition from training to practice, what are they getting into for the early careers, and then for those that are already in practice, what do we do next? Because there comes a point in your career, like it did with mine, that you want to pivot and you want to change. And having an ally to really understand what it is you're looking for and to help you get there is critical. So I did have the opportunity. Many things happened in my life at the right time that conspired for me to be able to launch Lucid. And I took the plunge and I did exactly what I always tell my physicians to do, which is look within yourself and follow your gut and do what's right for you and take the plunge because the universe will be there to provide the safety net. And I did. And I'm very proud to have founded Lucid, and it's growing and loving it. So That's a little bit of how we got here.
So tell me about Lucid.
So Lucid is a consulting company that it really focuses on providing for both the physician on the physician side and the employer, the healthcare system, the ability to be able to provide clarity, lucidity, hence Lucid, for communication, for understanding, to be able to provide the information and the background that's needed so that there's good, clear communication between the candidates and the employers. And I'll kind of tell you a little bit about what that means in terms of both of those sides. So I'll jump real quick on the employer side, and then I'll jump back to the candidates, which is really what we want to focus on today. On the employer side, having been on the employment side and having seen all these candidates come in, I think sometimes we are so eager to bring in candidates and fill roles, especially with the shortage of physicians that we have nowadays, that sometimes we do ourselves a little bit of a disservice by not really stopping and really, really getting into the weeds with our candidates about this is what the position is about. What are you really looking for? Delivering the right message, delivering the right tools, telling them this position is going to be for X, Y, and Z. Is this what you're looking for? Is it going to match what you're after? Because the last thing that we want is to be able to bring in a physician just to be able to hire them because we have that need for that specialty, only to learn a year, 2 years from now that we promised them that we would build a specialty clinic when in reality we didn't have the resources to do it. But we needed that specialty. So we kind of, overpromise and underdeliver. So one of the things that I'm trying to do on the employer side is to be able to help healthcare systems really hone in on providing consistency, standardization, and really rethink the communication that they use with the candidates. So that's on that side and helping on that side. So kind of putting the candidate hat on and go and provide that on the employer side. On the physician side is where my passion really is. And it's really providing the candidate with all the tools that they will need to be able to make educated, good decisions. And what I mean by that, and this is at any point in their career, but where I see the most need is for residents and fellows. So throughout my career, one of the hardest things I think was to be, especially, at the time when residents and fellows were looking for jobs, there were so many times I interviewed every single candidate that came through our division. I always interviewed them. It doesn't matter how tight my schedule was. I would find time to interview them. Sometimes it would take a little longer, but I always made it a point to get to know them because it was my responsibility. I saw it as my responsibility. If that person was going to be hired by our division and that person was going to be relocating from across the country, that person was going to be shifting their life, changing everything, picking up, moving. It was my responsibility to make sure that they understood everything. And many, many, many times, residents and fellows had what I call the deer in headlights look. Oh my God, because they didn't understand. They have no clue about contracts, or they had no clue about what a non-compete was, or bundled payment, or call schedules and what it meant and how it transferred into a contract. Should they be in private practice? Should they go to a multi-specialty group? Should they go to a healthcare system? Should it be private? Should it be not-for-profit, for-profit, etc.? And I found it really interesting that our physicians, who are incredibly well-trained clinically, spend so many years training, and then at the time where they really are now ready to join the marketplace, basically join our communities and offer that, they really have very, very little information. And it's not a fault of their own, and it's not a GME fault either. It's the fact that their purpose is to train them to be medical doctors, not business men and women. So I find that it's our responsibility to do that. So I tasked myself with the lofty goal of changing that. And at one point I will. Because I really think that the same way that we've introduced into GME training different curriculums to be able to help them with wellness and burnout and all these different things, we have to change the way that our physicians are trained to be able to go into practice, because there's a huge disconnect.
There absolutely is. I travel a lot and talk to a lot of residents, and a lot of them tell me, I'm not sure how to begin the job search. And that's the fundamental basic line at the end of training, is just starting the search. And it is overwhelming. There is a lot to it. Contracts are a spooky thing. That's just this black cloud that kind of looms out there. So there is a lot to it. And you're right. It's not on the GME program, and it's really not on the residents. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are training to become physicians, right? Not businessmen and women. And that's a very good point. I think a lot of it too is for the residents to know they're not alone in this, and that it's not to be scared to come forward and ask questions. And I always tell them, you've trained all this time. It's okay to be picky. It's okay to say exactly what you want. This is your time to be as picky and specific as you can possibly be. If it doesn't work out, the next best thing is still there.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And especially with physician shortage being such an issue across the country, it's really up to them to really understand what it is they really want and really look inwards and position themselves for the best opportunity that they can get. Because a lot of these physicians, they tend to limit their scope to where they trained, the areas or maybe where they grew up. And that's great because it allows them to stay in certain communities which are needed. But by the same token, these physicians have spent 12, sometimes 17 years training, and they owe it to themselves to be able to find the absolute best career move for themselves and to be valued as such. Because that's the other part of it. And it's not just money. And when I mean valued, I'm not talking about money. Yes, money is critical. I mean, a lot of them, they've been on a resident or fellow salary and with huge debt. Now it's their turn to go out and to practice and start kind of recouping and making that money. And yes, that's all great in the end. And yes, that's important. But it's more than that. It's what is going to make you happy. Clinically, you've trained towards this path. Are you going to make it in that path? Are you going to be able to find the right career move that is going to fulfill that? That it's going to give you everything you position yourself for. Is your family in the right place? Is your quality of life what you're seeking? Because it changes. And that is all critical parts, And it's not just the residents and fellows. Some of them, get to mid-career and they're still trying to figure it out. So it's important to start early.
It is, yes. I'm not sure how many people actually sit down and think about what things are the most important to them in their life. And if you had to sacrifice that, would you be okay? And you cannot sacrifice those. It sounds silly sometimes, I think, in this day and age to say sit down and make a list. But that's exactly what you need to do. You need to make your list.
Absolutely. Even if it's a mental list, but you need to take accountability. I like to tell my son, nobody is going to be your best advocate except yourself. And that to me is the biggest message I can give all of my physicians that I work with. Because when I speak with them, you hear the timidness. These are human beings that are incredibly well trained, bright human beings. Sometimes they're timid about their own future. It's like, no, I'm going to remind you how worthy you are. I'm going to remind you how amazing you are. I'm going to remind you that when you take that scalpel and you go into that operating room, you are changing somebody's life. That is critical. They forget that sometimes. They're so used to it every single day. And unless we're in the business and unless we see what their work does, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. A lot of the physicians that I recruited, my team recruited, because I wasn't doing it alone. We were a team. That our team recruited and ended up in my practices, our practices, ended up taking care of my own family members and myself. That's huge because you need to know that one thing leads to another and it creates a change.
That is absolutely great. Let's talk a little bit about starting the job search. So residents are unsure of where to begin their job search. We talked about that a little bit. What's the right timeline and what are the first steps they should take other than going to PracticeLink.com?
So PracticeLink is an excellent resource. I can tell you because I used it for many, many, many years being on the other side. So kudos to you guys. So timing is always now. I mean, every single physician that is in training, it doesn't matter when you're in training, you should start thinking about it now. And what I mean by that, it doesn't matter if you're in medical school and you still have to go through residency. It should always be in the back of your mind what your goal is, because that is going to be your North Star. I believe we need to have a North Star that's going to guide us to where we need to go. And that North Star should be what specialty you want to do, be involved in, what kind of values you have, what kind of practice you want to be in. Start giving that some thought, because that's going to start providing for you that path that you're going to start going down. But when it comes to time to practicality in terms of actual physical timeline, ideally, you should be looking to start putting feelers out at the very least, at the very beginning of your last year of training. If you know you're going to be done June 30th of whatever coming year, July 1st, start settling in. And in August, start putting feelers out there. I have to tell you, one of the absolute best physicians that I've been working with, I don't like calling them clients. One of the best physicians I've been working with is an amazing ophthalmologist who is 2 years out, and he's already securing employment. And I have to tell you, that tenacity, that fire in the belly really resonates on the employer side, because the absolute best jobs are picked up quickly. And there's always a red flag when you are a straggler at the tail end. That's really important for physicians to know. Recruiters see it as a red flag when it's January, February, and you're graduating, finishing in June, and you are now beginning to look. Why? And sometimes it's not their fault. They just don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, I usually tell them 18 months before you finish, you need to familiarize yourself with PracticeLink or an online job board like PracticeLink. You would also, of course, be working on your CV, tweaking it, building it, all of that. But before 18 months before you finish, it's always good to look to see what jobs are out there. Become familiar with the job market. A lot of the jobs will post salaries now, which is important. If you go to PracticeLink.com and you search positions, the recruiter's name, photo, email address, cell phone number oftentimes are listed there. And it's okay to reach out to them, with questions. I think that, yeah, you're right. Now's the time. If you're a first-year resident, there's no reason not to utilize a platform like PracticeLink to familiarize yourself with what all is out there, a free CV builder, great resources that are free.
Absolutely. And the CV should be something that should be started now and build upon it and be very strategic and be very precise and be very mindful of the nuances on it, because that is a reflection of you.
At PracticeLink, we believe tomorrow's healthcare leaders deserve support today. That's why we created the First Practice Fund, a scholarship program awarding $2,500 to 6 dedicated individuals preparing for their first practice. The next application window opens soon. Don't miss your opportunity. Your future is waiting. Find out more at PracticeLink.com. So what's the biggest mistake that you see new physicians make early in their search, and how can they avoid it?
They don't have deep introspection as to what they're really seeking. They want a job. They've been training for so long that they just want to get out. They want to get out and they want to be able to have a job and be an attending and make a decent salary. And that need is so strong sometimes that they do not stop and question the type of jobs that they're getting, review contracts in detail. And I'm not talking about just a lawyer taking a look at it. There's a difference between a lawyer taking a look at it, which I think is absolutely necessary, and there's a difference between someone who understands the business side of it, looking at it and really tearing it apart and explaining it. Because you want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a pickle. If you know you're going to be in a community and that community is a small community and you want to be there, you want to grow your family there, don't put yourself in situations that if it doesn't work out, it's going to push you out of that area. Be mindful of that. Be mindful that if you're going into a practice with X number of additional physicians, what is it RVU based? What does it mean then? And is everybody gobbling up the same pie? Those are the kind of questions that need to be asked that sometimes doesn't explain it on a contract. Somebody needs to really help you see that. And if you don't have somebody who you can partner with, ask somebody who's already in practice. Ask the questions. Don't just go blindly. It's really important because that's what happens. That's what happens when they go into it and then a year, 2 years, it's not working and then it starts all over again.
I think always a great free resource for residents is staying in touch and reaching out to maybe the chief resident from the year before or your fellow classmates who have gone before you. No two situations are ever going to be the same, but you can get some valuable information from the class ahead of you because they're going to go through this a lot earlier than you are. So they've already been through it. So great free resource right there.
And the program directors, your program directors want you to succeed.
Program directors, yes, absolutely. And you're working in a hospital full of physicians, so it's okay to ask some of those physicians you feel comfortable with. So when a resident is evaluating an offer, we talked about this a little bit with lifestyle and things like that. What 3 things should they pay attention to just beyond salary?
Values. Their values and the values of the employer where they're going. And by values, I mean the organization has values that are set in terms of where do you see yourself practicing? Does it align with your thinking clinically? Does it align with the culture that you want? And culture is very difficult to look at and to determine, but it is critical because if you align yourself with a culture that doesn't necessarily align with your thinking in terms of your growth, if you are looking to eventually grow into a medical director role or expand, etc., and it's not a culture that is going to allow for you to grow within that culture, it may not necessarily be a place you want to be. The other part that is really, really important is look at your peers. When you walk the halls, and this is where culture also kind of falls into it, but it's really important for you to interview the same way they're interviewing you. This is your chance to interview them. Actually, I think it's more important because at the end of the day, that hospital or that practice is there to stay. It's bricks and mortars. They're there to stay. They're already set. You're the one who is picking up your bags, picking up your family, relocating across the country, and setting up a new shop. Interview, interview, interview. Question everybody. Look at everybody. Look how everybody behaves in front of you and on the side. That's really important because that's going to tell you how eventually you're going to be treated. So those nuances are really important. Community is really important. And where you are in a community is critical because think ahead of what you want to do. Do you want to live a single lifestyle? Do you have a family? Do you need to think about your kids? Do you want to raise your kids here? Is this a place that is going to be a stepping stone for you? You know, sometimes cities are great stepping stone to really build up your career and then move into another one in a suburb area that's more family friendly. Trauma surgeon will be a perfect example of that. You want to go into a super busy area. You may not necessarily want to build a family in that area. It's so, you're working an ungodly amount of hours. Those kind of things are really, really important. As I mentioned, salary is important, but it is not everything. And look at training. Look at the opportunity for growth. That to me is critical because that's what's going to set you to the next level of your career.
So tell me, you think it's okay to ask also why there's a position open if the department is growing, things like that? I mean, that's crucial to ask that. And I think a lot of people are a little bit timid in asking things like that.
It's more than okay. I think it is your responsibility to ask that and to question them. And if they're hesitant with their answer or if they evade the question, then huge red flag. They should really be forthcoming. They should tell you whether the position you're applying for is a replacement. And if it's a replacement, what happened to the person before you? And if they're replacing the position, they're replacing the person left for growth, for example, and there's enough business to go around, so they need to replace the person? Or did they do their due diligence? Was the person happy? If it's for growth, what does it look like? What are the RVUs? How many patients do they see? What is the third next appointment? Ask those questions. How do they see you growing? Where do you fit into the group? When you come in, how are you going to be slated into that group? How are you going to be part of it? Do they see the department growing? What is their 5-year projection? Would you buy a pair of shoes without trying them on? You wouldn't, right? Would just pick them up? No, you really want to make sure they fit. Otherwise, you're going to be walking in them, right? Same thing. Would you buy a house without asking, without doing an inspection? You wouldn't. It's the same thing. It's our life. It's our career.
Let's talk a little bit about contracts and negotiation. So, of course, negotiation is intimidating, especially for a new resident who's just finished up training. What are some strategies that residents can use to negotiate confidently?
First of all, educate yourself. There's plenty of information out there right now that you can Google. You can try to find out what the 25th percentile is for your specialty and look at MGMA, Sullivan Cutter, look at all of these surveys out there and try to gauge a little bit of what the salary would be. and look at other positions across the country. Because as you were saying, especially now with pay transparency, a lot of healthcare systems are going to be posting those salaries. It's important for you to see it. Now, be mindful that you're coming out of training, which means that you can't be asking for the world because you still don't have the world under your feet. You still haven't earned those stripes yet. So be mindful of that, but also be mindful of all the training and everything that comes along. The more information you have, the more educated you are about something, the more you understand what a typical relocation looks like, what a typical salary for your specialty is, what a typical sign-on bonus is in the area you're looking, the more confident you're going to feel to be able to very professionally and very gently really ask and be grateful. I'm grateful for the offer, but I was thinking more along the lines of X, Y, and Z. And then if you're one of those individuals that much rather have somebody else fight the fight for you, then you have someone like Lucid. That's what we do. We basically become your voice in these negotiations and set the tone for you so that we either educate you with everything you need, arm you, so that you go in there and know exactly, we review your contracts and say, you know what? Hey, this is a really good contract. You're actually getting their sweet deal. Maybe perhaps relocation is too low. We can help you. Or you know what? You have 3 contracts. This one sounds amazing, but it's really RVU driven. When you boil it down, it's going to be peanuts, or you're going to be working 150 hours a week, or vice versa. You can look at that, or you can put it on our laps and we work directly with the employer and basically help you negotiate that. But you can do this too. You can just get the information you need and do this. You're capable. You've been capable, put yourself through medical school and everything else. You're absolutely capable. You are an incredible human being who's gotten this far. You most definitely can do this. You just need to know. Education is power.
Absolutely. Great words of wisdom there. What about benefits or clauses that residents overlook in contracts that really could affect their quality of life?
So one that's really, really important is sometimes some of the contracts are very specific about their call schedule, or not specific at all and just leave call schedule to the open. And they may walk into a call schedule that will be really crazy, and they are expected to be basically, since they're the newbies, covering call schedule for the majority of the senior folks. You need to know what you're getting into. You need to ask the questions. You cannot be afraid to ask the questions, because otherwise you're going to be tied to a contract that you're not going to be able to go look at employment anywhere else in a vicinity because of your non-compete. And hopefully non-competes will go away at some point, but they haven't yet. And you're stuck with that, which means now if you're going to leave, you're going to have to relocate again. So that's important. Your out clause is really important. Most people think, okay, I'm getting a 3-year contract, I'm getting a 5-year contract. It's great. Well, yeah, no, not really. What you're getting is, what is your out clause? What an out clause is how much time does an employer need to give you without cost to leave? And how much time do you need to give them to leave? When you boil it down, that's really your contract. If you have a 90-day out clause, that means that technically they can give you 90 days. So you can have a 5-year contract. Now, there's stipulations in that contract with cost, without cost, with severance package, without severance package. Those are all the nuances you need to look at. But those out clauses are critical. Look at it, because a typical out clause is 90 days. I think that's fair. It takes 90 days to transition patients. It takes 90 days for you to go somewhere else to try to find a physician. It actually takes a lot longer than 90 days to find a physician, but it's typical. 120 days, I've seen 120 days, but I can tell you I've seen physicians who have signed 6 months. Think about the fact, if you want to leave and you've made up your mind and you have to leave and you give notice, now you have to wait 6 months. That is painful. But you need to know what you're signing. Just like the non-competes. The non-competes are crazy. I once saw a contract on a physician that in the county that I was seeing this contract, the county is a rectangle. So imagine a long rectangle. And Atlantic on this side, the Everglades. I'm in Florida, so the Everglades on this side. He had signed a non-compete for a 50-mile radius. Now, that's unreasonable. Most likely in a court of law, it won't stick. But you have to pay a lawyer. You have to get to a court of law. You have to do everything. Around. When I looked, I said, why did you sign this? I didn't know any better. Well, you can practice if you get a boat up in the Atlantic Ocean. Or you can go practice with the alligators. Unless you go across the pond over there and you go to the west coast of Florida. But you can't practice in this county. You're completely out of the county. You're completely out of even the southern county and even parts of the northern county. That's critical.
That's major.
That's major.
Mm-hmm.
It's your life in exchange for money.
So let's talk a little bit about transitioning from trainee to attending. So jumping from residency to attending is massive. What's one mindset shift that residents should adopt to make the transition smoother?
The most important one, you're no longer a resident. You're no longer a fellow. Now it's 100% on you. The buck stops with you. You can't turn around and look and say, I'm under somebody else's watch. And that is really, really important because it's not just about the liability that comes with it, the responsibility that comes with it. It's also a mind shift in terms of the decisions that come with it. And that's why when you asked me at the very beginning, when should they start looking? The answer is now, because even though you're still in training, you need to start thinking as a physician. You need to position yourself to know that after medical school, residency and fellowship is on-the-job training. You need to position yourself to know that you're going to be on your own and every decision that you make is on you. And that goes not just for the clinical aspect of everything you're doing, so malpractices and all these other things that come along with it that will follow you forever, but also the decisions you make about your career. Think about it. Residency and fellowship all are based on matches. You go where you're matched. So you really don't have, yes, you pick where you really want to match, where you really want to go, but you really go where you're matched, right? So it's kind of outside of your control. When it comes to your career, you are in the driver's seat. It's a different mindset. Not everybody can transition that mindset. That's why a lot of physicians stay in the place they're in because they're comfortable, which is not a bad thing, but it doesn't also allow you to really explore your world.
It would be nice if there were a match. Maybe we need to create that, Mariela. Maybe we need to create the match for the perfect job somehow. So even before graduating, what can residents do to start building their professional brand and reputation? You know, professional branding right now, it's critical. It's huge.
Critical. It's critical. Mm-hmm. And I've actually met quite a few agencies that focus specifically on branding physicians, which is really interesting. So in an age where social media is king, queen, whatever we want to call it, it is absolutely critical and important for physicians, anybody, any human being, to be mindful of everything that we do, because everything we do becomes stamped and it becomes out there, especially everybody who does Instagram and, you know, all these social medias. That is creating your brand. Now, it's creating either a professional brand, a strong brand, or it's not. It really depends on what you're putting out there. And that's the part that sometimes not everybody realizes. Not everybody realizes that by not creating a brand, you're also creating a brand. And that brand could be negative. If you're out there partying and showing all these things, trust me when I tell you, employers look at it, whether they want to say it or not. Everybody now looks at everything. A strong brand, you as an expert, a subject matter expert on a certain thing, if putting yourself up there, really resonating with it, being a mentor, being involved, and really being mindful as to what you're putting out there is really important. Yes, I do believe that creating a brand is really, really important as long as it's the right brand. Either that or just completely stay out of it.
It's so true. I think that maybe we shouldn't look people up on social media when we see their name come across our desk, but I think that's just commonplace.
I don't think we should either. And ideally we should, and recruiters shouldn't do it. But I wouldn't be surprised if people do it.
People do it. And as generations come up that have always had social media in their life from the time they were born, it will become more and more commonplace. It's just human curiosity, a natural thing now that's just part of life. So be careful.
Yeah. And when you purposely put your life on the forefront all the time and on for the world to see, you're kind of putting yourself out there, good or bad. But it could be good. It could be really good. I mean, imagine being an expert in, I don't know, cornea transplant and speaking about it and making a difference and really getting the word out. Things like that are really, really important.
They are important.
Hi there. My name is Sarah Eichinger, recipient of the First Practice Fund Scholarship. We all know starting a career in medicine isn't easy. For many of us, financial stress is just another part of the journey. That's why the First Practice Fund meant so much to me. It's not just a scholarship, but true support for those working to bring care where it's needed most. Applications for the next round of this no-strings, free-to-enter scholarship are opening soon. Visit PracticeLink.com for more information.
So let's talk about work-life balance and well-being. We've talked about this before outside of the podcast, and you've spoken about simplicity and balance in your own life. What advice do you have for new physicians trying to juggle demanding schedules in personal life?
So I think knowing yourself and creating boundaries is really, really important, especially when you start off. When you start off in any job, you always want to put yourself forward. You always want to show everybody everything you can do. And unfortunately, sometimes we'll become a yes, yes, yes person. Not that there's anything wrong per se with that, but there is something wrong when it's at your detriment. And physician burnout is very, very real. There's a bit of a discrepancy between the parents, because sometimes we have males that are the stay-at-home parents or the ones that are actually taking additional shifts with the kids. That is also very important, to be able to have that balance, to be able to provide for yourself a little bit of quality of life. It's important to know what you're giving at work. It's important to know what you're doing for yourself. And I myself, I'm terrible at trying to find time for myself, but you have to carve it into it, because otherwise there will be burnout. Physicians are notorious for this, notorious for really burning out. You've been burning out the candle at both ends for so many years. This is only natural. So take advantage of the wellness programs that a lot of healthcare systems have now. And GME has great programs now, even after you finish. The AMA also has a lot of really good programs. Find your niche. Find what centers you. For me, I'm a tinkler, so I have to be doing something with my hands all the time. It's what allows me to think. It's what allows me to really bring myself into myself. So I'm either crafting, painting, or doing something with my hands. So whatever that is that creates that bridge for you, it's important. And it's important to say no. That's why it's so important at the very beginning to ask the questions and know the kind of job you're getting yourself into. Because you don't want to burn out. You don't want to get into something that 2 years from now, you're going to be looking for something else.
Something that's very crucial, too, in this part of the game is finding your community. Find your community. As soon as you can find your community, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely. And a mentor and a buddy system. And go into the same way that when you were training someone, most of the time you had an ally of some kind. Do the same thing. It's hard, though. It's hard when you start in a brand new place and everybody's kind of has their clique and you're trying to fit in. But you know what? Back to the very beginning, that concept I mentioned about communication and building that rapport and how it's just as critical for on the physician and as the employer side. Employers need to do that. It is really on the employer side also to do that. to be able to onboard physicians in a way that is really, really going to help them. Because I think that's where we lack also as employers. We don't onboard any employee at all, especially physicians, but any employee. This goes for anybody. But when you bring in physicians that are so critical to your healthcare system, nurses the same way, you need to onboard them and really integrate them into your community and into your own cliques. And we do a not so great job at onboarding. We think they're here. Okay, they're great. They're integrating. No, they're not. That leads to a lot of migration, out migration, and lack of retention.
So very true. Yes. I was just fortunate enough to have Donna Ecclestone from Ecclestone Onboarding. Yes, she was just on the podcast last week, and that episode will be coming out shortly. But a lot of great words of wisdom about onboarding and how crucial it is and really what needs to be happening more with onboarding. We talked a little bit too, you and I, about it's not just putting a body into a position. It's not just filling that role because that role's been open for 2 years, or there's so much more involved. So yeah, little shout out there for Ecclestone Onboarding.
She's the queen of onboarding.
Yes. So what trends in physician recruitment or healthcare should residents and fellows be paying attention to right now?
So AI is coming into the scene. How that's going to really play out on the physician side and on how that's going to play out on the recruitment side, I've yet to see that. I'm an old-fashioned person. I believe in relationship building. I believe in the power of the word, of looking at people in the eye and building that. So those are trends that are on the horizon. I couldn't tell you because I'm still on the fence on that one. Also, there's a lot of different shifts happening. Concierge medicine, it's growing for a lot of physicians, and I'm not sure how long that's going to last either. When telemedicine first came out and everybody was kind of looking at it, things like that. In terms of recruitment, I haven't seen much of it lately, but I did many years ago. I would love to see a return of being able to subsidize residents and fellows on their last year of training and hire them a whole year ahead and help them and subsidize them until they start. I don't see that a lot happening anymore. I would love that to become a trend again. And I'll tell you why. I think number one, it is a win-win all around. It really helps bring in quality physicians into your healthcare system early on that they're going to be joining you. And number two, so it shows that commitment on your end, and it shows commitment on the end of the physician to be able to sign early. And it also is a win for the physician because sometimes they struggle on the tail end, It's not a huge salary that they make when they're finishing. So rather than a sign-on bonus right at the very beginning of starting, how about something like a stipend that gets paid out? I would love to see that become a trend.
I think even signing second-year residents. I think once they get through first year, if you're watching them closely through first year, signing them in second year, again, onboarding at that point, that's a great way to get people tied to your community.
And engage them. And it shows you really care.
It shows you really care, yes. You can even observe third and fourth year medical students who are rotating through the facility. You can get a good grasp on medical students in their fourth year. If they were based at your hospital for several rotations in third year and a few in fourth year, it's a great way to really kind of grow your own.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Even if they're not in your own GME program, if you're the chief of whatever, I don't know, cardiovascular services, and your colleague across the country has an amazing fellow, and you're able to go and see that person operate and see how that's going, and that person still has 2 more years to go for whatever reason, and you're able to lock in that person ahead of time, it's a win-win because it also shows commitment on the side of your program, and it shows commitment on the relationship that you're building, cross programs. Hopefully that will come back.
We'll throw that out in the universe, yes, and hopefully it will come back. So as we look at wrapping up, let me ask you this. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, just starting out, what would it be?
Do more what makes me happy. Say no a little more often. And in a healthy way, I think we need to be selfish a little more sometimes. In a healthy way. What I mean by that is, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough kudos. We don't give ourselves the power to accept and understand everything we bring to the table. And every single one of us brings something different. We're amazing human beings, all of us. And we forget that as people. We're so entrenched in every single day doing different things that whatever we set out to do, we can. And we just need to remind ourselves that it's doable.
And don't compare yourself to others.
Absolutely not. And you know what? At the end of the day, the only thing we have is this moment. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, this moment. That's why it's so important to know what it is when you ask. When do we start? Now.
I love it. So one last question for you. If our listeners remember just one takeaway from today's conversation, what would you want it to be?
Be true to yourself and take the plunge. You, as a physician, have really done amazing work in putting yourself through medical school, through residency, and even fellowship if you're there. If you've done that, you can do anything. You are capable of so much, and you're doing something that the world needs, absolutely needs. It is such a gift, and it is such an art to do this. It's really amazing to see the work that goes into this, because it's not easy work.
It's very long-term. It's extreme dedication beyond belief.
Exactly. Sometimes I fantasize I would have been a great surgeon because I love to, tinker and cut. And then I think of the hours and I'm like, no, can't do it. So that's why I will do whatever I can to help them, because they will eventually help us.
Well, I truly, truly appreciate you being on the podcast today. I can't thank you enough. I would love for you to come back and we can do a deeper dive into some of the pieces that we talked about today. I think we could talk for hours. I truly do. There's so many hints and tips and just great advice. So thank you for being here. On behalf of myself and PracticeLink, we would like to thank Mariela Alvarez-Sosa for being a guest on our podcast. For our listeners, please reach out with any questions or feedback about anything we covered today by emailing me. If you wish to receive more information about PracticeLink, please visit our website, www.practicelink.com. Mariela, would you like to share any websites or any information you want to give out?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. And first and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It really genuinely was a pleasure. So if the listeners want to learn more about Lucid, they can visit experiencelucid.com. That's experiencelucid.com, or they can email me, Mariela, at lucidhealthcareconsulting.com.
Thank you so much. And we will see you hopefully soon. And my name is Charley Lowry, and we thank you for listening to Surviving and Thriving in Residency.